How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you at a special time on a Tuesday, Yom Shlishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Tuesday? Melissa in Great Neck, Bella in Florida, John in Maine, Yehuda, South Carolina, Joe in the Inland Empire, Lucy in Minnesota, Lorraine in Texas, Guy in Ohio, Ella in Southern California. Welcome everybody as we open chapter 2 here in Tractate Shevuos, the 26th volume of the Talmud. This chapter continues the exploration that we started in the single Mishna chapter 1. There we in the realm of oaths, we saw that there are two kinds of oaths which are considered for, and likewise a few other areas of the law, including one who was tamei, in a state of ritual impurity, and then forgot that he was impure when he either entered the holy temple or ate sacrificial foods, or he remembered that he was ritually impure, tamei, but forgot that he was standing in the temple or that he was eating a food which was actually a sacrificial food. And then later he remembers, and so then he becomes obligated to bring the sliding scale sin offering to make an atonement. If he doesn't become aware later that he had done this, then he wouldn't know that he's obligated to bring that offering. And so the goat of Yom Kippur, or the new moon or festival, would sort of atone for him until he does remember, if he remembers at some point. Now, it's very interesting, we'll be covering this in greater detail today, is that this particular law has this requirement that you knew you were tamei at one point, right? There are other laws where you unwittingly come to violate them, even about being in a state of impurity, and only later did you realize that you were impure and that you came into contact with something that you're not, and then you'd become obligated to bring the offering. But about this particular transgression, being tamei in the temple and then being obligated to bring the sliding scale offering, it only applies if you did know at the beginning that you were tamei, and then you forgot, or it became hidden from you. Somehow you lost that awareness. You have to have initial awareness, and you would have to have later awareness in order to become obligated to bring the offering. And so you would have had to have the lapse of awareness in between, or there's the possibility that you never become aware at the end, but you had to have the initial awareness. Okay, now we're in chapter 2, Mishnah number 1. We're going to continue this discussion, but we're going to have other kinds of detail about the awareness, when you had it, when you didn't, and because you might also have a lapse of awareness that you're standing in the courtyards of the Holy Temple. Well, what exactly was that? Now we're going to have to get a little bit more detailed about exactly where does this prohibition of being tamei in the Holy Temple apply. So let's get into it. We're on page 14a, and our dots, we're going to do a double today. They're short because we got a great head start on 14a yesterday, so we're going to do pages 14 and 15. Okay, Mishnah number 1 of chapter 2. Tractate Shevuos. With regard to cases of awareness of the defiling of the temple, meaning that you entered it while tamei, ritually impure, or defiling sacrificial foods by eating them while ritually impure, while tamei, there are two types that are actually four. How so? If one became tamei and he was aware that he was tamei, but afterward his impurity, his tumah, became hidden from him, right? He forgot or somehow lost the awareness. Though he remembered that he was eating sacrificial food, which is forbidden to one who is tamei. Right? So he forgot that he was tamei, but he knew he was eating sacrificial food. If the fact that he was partaking of sacrificial food became hidden from him, though he remembered that he was tamei, this is the second of the four types of awareness, right? The first is he forgot he was tamei, he knew he was eating sacrificial foods. That's type 1. Type 2, he remembered that he was tamei, but he forgot that he was eating sacrificial food. And this same law applies if both this and that were hidden from him. If he knew he was tamei and then he forgot he was tamei and he didn't realize he was eating sacrificial food. And so that's still type 2. And the same law applies if both this and that were hidden from him. In all these cases, if he partook of the sacrificial food and he was unaware either that he was tamei or that the food was sacrificial food, or both, and after he partook of it, he remembered, right? He became aware that he had forgotten he was tamei or that he was eating sacrificial food, then he is required to bring the sliding scale sin offering. In this type of offering, the sinner sacrifices an animal, bird, or meal offering, depending on his financial status. And similarly, with regard to entering the Holy Temple, right, when it's standing in Jerusalem, we're not just talking about some synagogue, we're only talking about the Holy Temple when it stood in Jerusalem, and God willing will again when Mashiach comes. So, if one became tamei, and he was aware that he was tamei, but afterward his tumah became hidden from him, though he remembered that he was entering the temple, which is prohibited for one who is in a state of tumah, this is the third of the four types of awareness of tumah. If the fact that he was entering the temple was hidden from him, though he remembered that he was tamei, this is the fourth type of awareness of impurity. And the same law applies if both this and that were hidden from him, both the fact that he was tamei and that he had entered the temple and was unaware of his tumah. And then after he left, he became aware of what was hidden from him, then he is required to bring the sliding scale sin offering. As for the boundaries of the temple, with regard to the laws of impurity, the same law applies to one who enters the area that was part of the original temple courtyard and to one who enters the later addition to the temple courtyard, because the additional section is sanctified with the full sanctity of the temple courtyard. And the Mishna notes this is the case as additions can be made to the city of Jerusalem or to the temple courtyards only by way of, right, these are the very stringent requirements to expand the temple courtyards or the boundaries of Jerusalem, holy Jerusalem, not just sort of secular Jerusalem, but the holy city of Jerusalem. In order to expand that or to expand the boundaries of the temple courtyard, what is required? This can only be done by a special body comprising of the king, a prophet, the Urim V'Tumim, right, which was, we don't know exactly what it was, but it was some kind of a device. Some say it was a parchment with God's name on it inserted into the breastplate of the high priest, and using this when there was a question, should we go to war or not, the king and the high priest, it was like a hotline to God, right? There's the old joke about the hotline to God. You know, it's $1 million a minute when you call, you know, from Washington or some other capital in Europe. But, when the prime minister of Israel calls, it's 10 cents a minute because it's a local call, right? That's an old joke. But this idea is that the Urim v'Tumim is a hotline to God. And you would also need the Sanhedrin, the great Sanhedrin of 71 judges, and 2 thanks offerings, and a special song. All of these would be required in order to expand the courtyard of the Holy Temple or the boundaries of Jerusalem, right? So in the absence of a king, in the absence of a high priest, in the absence of a Sanhedrin, in the absence of the Urim v'Tumim, you can't do this. And we have a tradition that the Urim v'Tumim was only extant in the desert, right? When the Jews came out of Egypt and received the Torah, and we originally created the tabernacle. And then, while the tabernacle stood for 400 years until Solomon built the first temple, and then somewhere at the end of the first temple period, we lost the Urim v'Tumim. Right? It was not present in the second temple, just as the Ark of the Covenant was not present in the second temple. Now, the Mishna provides certain details of the consecration ceremony that would be necessary to expand the courtyard. And the court would move forward, and 2 thanks offerings would be brought after them, and all the Jewish people would follow behind them. Now we're on page 14b. And when they would reach the end of the place that they desired to consecrate, right, to expand the courtyard of the Holy Temple, the inner thanks offering would be eaten and the outer one would be burned. The details of this ceremony will be described in the Gemara. And with regard to any addition to the temple that was not made with all these ceremonial procedures, one who enters there while ritually impure, while tamei, is not liable to bring an offering if his entry was unwitting, nor to be punished with kares, excision from the world to come, if it was intentional. Because without all this ceremony, we don't call it part of the courtyard of the Holy Temple. The first part of the Mishnah discussed one who became tamei before entering the temple. And the Mishnah proceeds to consider a case involving one who was tamei who was tahor, he was ritually pure when he entered the temple, but he became impure while he was standing in the temple courtyard, right? Up until now, we've been talking about somebody who was tamei. Like we said, he went up to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festival. He attended a funeral that morning. He became tamei, handling the dead body, helping to bury it. Then he forgot about that, and he entered the Holy Temple in the afternoon, and then he realized what he'd done, so he would become obligated to bring that offering. What about one who was tahor, was ritually pure when he entered the precincts of the Holy Temple, and then something happened to render him impure? A dead creeping thing was found there. He had some kind of a bodily emission. Somebody, had a heart attack and dropped dead, and he handled the body. So he became tamei while he was standing in the Holy Temple. So what about him? Wait on a second. The Mishnah proceeds to consider a case of involving one who was ritually pure when he entered the temple, but who became impure, tamei, while in the temple courtyard, and afterward his impurity was hidden from him, but he remembered that he was standing in the temple, or the fact that he was standing in the temple was hidden from him, but he remembered his impurity, or both this and that were hidden from him. Right, so there has to be this lapse of awareness. So he realizes that he becomes tamei while standing in the temple, and then somehow it becomes hidden from him. In all these cases, if he bowed down, or he tarried in the temple courtyard long enough to bow down, even though he did not actually bow, or he went out by way of a longer route when he should have taken a shorter route, then he is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. But if he left the temple via the shortest way, he is exempt, right? So it's not that because you became tamei while you were in the temple, you automatically have to bring this offering. If you got out of there, right, as quickly and expeditiously as possible, you wouldn't have to bring this offering. Now, this mitzvah, that the person who is tamei must be sent out of the temple, is the positive mitzvah concerning the temple, for which, as is taught elsewhere in the Mishna, Tractate Arayos 8b, the Sanhedrin is not liable to bring an offering if they make an erroneous ruling in this regard. A communal bull sin offering is brought because of the unwitting transgression of a prohibition involving an action by the Jewish people that results from an erroneous halachic decision handed down by the Sanhedrin. But if the Sanhedrin mistakenly ruled that one who became impure while in the temple may leave by way of a longer route, they do not bring this offering, as it is brought only for an erroneous ruling on a matter that requires the bringing of a fixed sin offering and not a sliding scale offering for its unwitting violation. And we've seen that that sliding scale offering is what's involved for the unwitting violation of being tamei in the temple courtyard. And which is the positive mitzvah with regard to a menstruating woman, for which, as is taught in Arias over there, the Sanhedrin is liable to bring a bull offering for an erroneous ruling, right? So in Tractate Arias, the example that they use is if the Sanhedrin made a mistake with regard to this matter that we're going to describe, then there would be this communal sin offering if people followed that erroneous ruling of the Sanhedrin. Now, why is this case even being brought here? Because as you'll see, it has an interesting comparison to what we're talking about, right? One who becomes tamei while standing in the temple courtyard, he has to leave as expeditiously as possible. Okay, we're just going to be grown-ups here, and we're just going to read this and study it like the way we should, carefully and without, just carefully. Okay, so if a man was engaging in intercourse with his wife, presumably, and she is tahor, right? In other words, she's not menstruating, so they're permitted to each other. A husband and wife become prohibited to each other when she is a nida, when she is menstruating or counting clean days at the end of her period until she can immerse in the mikvah and they can become permitted to each other again. So if he was engaging in intercourse with her while she's tahor, she's pure, and during the course of this act of intercourse, she experienced menstrual bleeding. And she said to him, I have become tamei. And unwittingly, he immediately withdrew from her, and he did not wait until his member went from erect to flaccid. So then he would be liable to bring a sin offering for engaging in intercourse with a menstruating woman, because his withdrawal from her is as pleasant to him as his entry, right? In other words, you know, when his member is sliding against the walls of her vagina, that brings pleasure to both of them. So while he's, inserted, and she realizes, I'm menstruating right now. It just started. So if he just pulls out, then there's additional pleasure. And so this would be the unwitting violation of having intercourse with a nida. So he shouldn't just pull out. What he's supposed to do is wait until he goes flaccid so that there won't be this additional pleasure imparted by the pulling out, because the pulling out is like pushing in this regard. So if a husband and wife become aware that she's suddenly become a nida while they're in the middle of it, then he just has to freeze and just be totally still, wait. And by the way, he should be thinking about, oh no, this is not good. I'm in a situation that is a transgression situation. Fear of sin should be upon him. That will help him to, become flaccid quicker. And then he exits. And then she's a nida, so they're going to stop having physical contact until she's going to finish the menses, the clean days, immerse in the mikveh, etc. Rabbi Eliezer says, with regard to the sliding scale, and why is this being brought up now? Because that's different, right, than if a man becomes tamei while he's standing in the temple courtyard. There's no concern that there's any reason not to leave as expeditiously as possible. So he leaves as expeditiously as possible. Rabbi Eliezer says, with regard to the sliding scale offering, the verse states, quote, or if a person touches any impure thing, whether it is the carcass of a non-kosher undomesticated animal, or the carcass of a non-kosher domesticated animal, or the carcass of a non-kosher creeping animal, and it is hidden from him, Leviticus 5:2. So a precise reading of this verse indicates that in a case where one has a lapse of awareness, that he had contracted tumah, that he had contracted tumah by touching a creeping animal, so he is liable to bring a sliding scale offering for having defiled the temple or the sacrificial food. But he is not liable to bring such an offering in a case where he has a lapse of awareness that he is entering the temple or partaking of sacrificial food. That's Rabbi Eliezer's point. Similarly, Rabbi Akiva says, the verse states, and it is hidden from him so that he is impure, thereby teaching that in a case where one has a lapse of awareness that he had contracted tumah, he is liable to bring a sliding scale offering. But one is not liable to bring such an offering in a case where he has a lapse of awareness that he is entering the temple or partaking of sacrificial food. These are both minority opinions that we don't follow, right? As we've seen, the sliding scale offering does apply, whether he was tamei and then he forgot he was tamei and entered the temple and then he realized it, or whether he was tamei, he knew he was tamei, but he didn't realize he was entering the temple while he was tamei, and then he became aware of it. And Rabbi Yishmael says, the verse states, and it is hidden from him, and it states, and it is hidden from him twice, in order to render one liable to bring the sliding scale offering, both in a case where one has a lapse of awareness that he had become tamei, and in a case where one has a lapse of awareness that he is entering the temple. That's the Mishnah. Somewhat lengthy Mishnah. Now the Gemara on this Mishnah. The Mishnah teaches that the laws concerning awareness of tumah are two that are further subdivided into four, as we've discussed. So Rav Papa said to Abaye, are these actually two states of awareness that become four? As the Mishnah lists them, they seem to be two that are actually six. Awareness of the tumah at the beginning and at the end, awareness of sacrificial food at the beginning and at the end, and awareness of the temple, that you're standing in the temple at the beginning and at the end, right? You had to know that it was happening, then you forgot, and then you remembered. So the period of awareness is at the beginning and at the end. If it's not at the end, you don't bring the sliding scale offering because you don't know you're obligated. If it's not at the beginning, it doesn't apply. Abaye answered him, according to your reasoning that you count all the various cases listed in the Mishnah, there are actually 8 states of awareness, as there is also awareness of the tumah in connection with eating sacrificial food at the beginning and at the end, and awareness of tumah in connection with entering the temple at the beginning and at the end. So the Mishnah mentions awareness of tumah both in the first clause, which discusses eating sacrificial food, and in the second clause, which discusses entering the temple. So Rav Papa refutes this objection. He says, this is not difficult, la kasha, as the status of ritual impurity of tumah carries one name in both cases. The person was aware that he had become tamei, and then it became hidden from him. And there's no reason to distinguish between while he was, unaware, or once he forgot that he was tamei, whether he ate sacrificial food or entered the temple. The fact is he forgot that he was tamei. So accordingly, Rav Papa's first question remains, in any case, there are 6 states of awareness. So Rav Papa said in answer to his own question, actually there are 8 states of awareness. 2 of the tumah in connection with partaking the food, 2 of tumah in connection with entering the temple, 2 states of awareness of the food itself, that you're eating sacrificial food, and 2 states of awareness. Again, 2 states always at the beginning and at the end, and 2 states of awareness with regard to the fact that you're standing in the temple. So there's 8 states of awareness. But the first 4 states of awareness, with are you tamei or not, at the beginning do not in themselves bring the unwitting transgressor to liability to bring an offering,
as if he does not reach awareness at the end, he will not have known that he transgressed. Therefore, the Tana does not count them. But that's why it's 4, not 6, 4, not 8. But the Tana does not count, but the Tana does count the last 4 states of awareness, which is what brings the unwitting transgressor to the liability to bring an offering. And there are those who say that Rav Papa said as follows. Actually, there are 8 states of awareness, and it is the first 4 states at the beginning which are not found in the entire Torah that the Tana counts. Meaning, in all other instances where one is liable to bring an offering for an unwitting transgression, it is not necessary that there be any awareness at the beginning, right? For example, let's say that you are going to eat some kind of a prohibited food, right? Let's say that, somebody puts a pork chop in front of you and tells you that's a pork chop, right? So as a Jew, you cannot eat that. And then at a certain point, you forget that it's pork, you think it's beef, and you eat it. And then later, you remember that it was pork that you ate, and you're like, oh man, I ate something prohibited, so that was an unwitting violation, so that would be the same as this, right? And you would bring some kind of an offering for that. But what if you didn't know it was a pork chop at the beginning, right? You just came in, there was meat on the table, you thought it was beef, and you ate it. And then later, someone tells you, oh, that was pork, right? Then you still have to bring that same offering, right? It doesn't matter that you didn't know at the beginning. But with regard to this being tamei while entering the temple, or being tamei and eating sacrificial foods, you have to have known at the beginning that you were tamei, or this offering would not apply. The Amoraim, the sages of the Gemara, try to define the awareness of the tumah mentioned in the Mishnah. Rav Papa raises a dilemma. If the laws of tumah became hidden from him, not the fact that he was tamei, but what constitutes tumah, right? If he didn't know the law of what makes a person tamei or not, then what is the law? Is he liable to bring the sliding scale offering in such a situation? So the Gemara says, what are the circumstances of the case that you're asking about? So if we say that he did not know whether a creeping animal is tamei or tahor, right, impure or pure, or whether a frog is tamei or tahor, well, this is a topic that you could go learn in a children's school, as these matters are explicitly recorded in the Torah. So they can never be considered hidden. So we don't say that ignorance of the law means that you never knew, because it was easily available to find out. So actually, Rav Papa must have been asking about a case where he knew the essential law with regard to tumah of a creeping animal, that it imparts tumah to a person who comes into contact with it. But it is in a case where he touched a portion of the animal that was of a lentil bulk, and he did not know the law concerning whether a portion that was only the bulk, the size of one lentil, it renders a person tamei or does not render a person tamei when he comes into contact with it. What is the minimum measure for coming into contact with a sheretz, a creeping animal that imparts tumah to the person? That's the law that he didn't know. Then what is the law? So the Gemara explains the 2 possibilities. Do we say that since he knows generally that a sheretz renders a person tamei through contact, so it is awareness? Or perhaps one says that since he does not know whether a portion as small as a lentil bulk renders a person tamei or does not render a person tamei, it is considered hidden from him, like he never knew. So the Gemara comments about this question, taiku, the question shall stand unresolved. Rabbi Yirmiyah raises a dilemma concerning the awareness of the temple. If a Babylonian or a resident of another country came to Eretz Yisrael, right? This only applies to Jews, right? It's quite interesting, right? Non-Jews do not become tamei. Being tamei or tahor, being impure, tamei, is not something that applies to non-Jews. This is only a Jew. So a Jew who lives in Babylonia visits Israel, visits Jerusalem, visits the Holy Temple when it's standing, and what? He doesn't know where the temple begins and ends. This could happen to a native of Israel too, but we're going to talk about the case of a Babylonian. Let's see. If a Babylonian or a resident of another country ascended to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, and the site of the temple was hidden from him, so that he unwittingly entered into the temple in a state of tumah, then what is the law? Is he liable to bring a sliding scale offering to atone for his offense or not? And the Gemara clarifies, and according to whose opinion was this dilemma raised? If it was raised in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who requires that there be awareness at the beginning in order for one to become liable to bring an offering, that is difficult, as Rabbi Akiva does not deem one liable when he had a lapse of awareness that he was entering the temple. And if the dilemma was raised in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, who deems one liable when he had a lapse of awareness that he was entering the temple, that is also difficult, as Rabbi Yishmael does not require that there be awareness at the beginning. According to both of these Tanaim, the dilemma is not relevant. So the Gemara explains, now, it was necessary to raise the dilemma only in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe, who requires awareness at the beginning and also deems one liable when he had a lapse of awareness that he was entering the temple. And he also says that awareness that one gains in the house of his teacher is called awareness. So what is the law in such a case? The Gemara explains the two possibilities. Do we say that since he knows that there is a temple somewhere in the world, that counts as awareness, that he had initial awareness? Or perhaps we say that since he did not know the precise location of the temple, it is considered hidden from him, right? In other words, for you to be liable to bring the sliding scale offering, you have to have this initial awareness that you are tamei, and that, the temple is over there. And then somehow it became hidden from you and you entered, and then later you remembered. Okay, so either it became hidden to you that you are tamei when you entered the temple, or it became hidden to you, you lost awareness of where the temple was. But you had to have that initial awareness. So in terms of this person who never knew where the holy temple was, do we say that he had that initial awareness because he knows that there's a temple somewhere? Or do we say that he did not have that initial awareness because he never knew exactly where the temple was? Teiku, this shall stand unresolved. Now the Mishnah teaches the same law applies to one who enters the area that was part of the original temple courtyard and to one who enters the later addition of the temple courtyard, as additions could be made to the city of Jerusalem or to the temple courtyards only by this special procedure where the king, a prophet, the Urim V'Tumim, and the Sanhedrin of 71 judges with 2 thanks offerings and a special song all expanded, either the borders of Jerusalem or the borders of the courtyards of the Holy Temple. So the Gemara asks, from where is this matter derived that we need all these people, this whole procedure? So Rav Shimi Bar Chia says, as the verse states, quote, according to all I show you, the form of the tabernacle and the form of all its vessels, and so shall you do. Exodus 25:9. Now this is the Torah, right? This is when the tabernacle and its accoutrement were first given by God to Moses, who commanded, Betzalel and Ohaliev and all the people who participated in the building of the tabernacle in the desert, right? This is when the commands came down for that. And the final words, and so shall you do, these words are superfluous. Why were they included in the Torah? To teach us, as was done in the tabernacle, so shall you do in future generations. Was there a king in the Midbar? No, but Moses was the sole leader of the Jewish people and can be likened to a king. Aaron was there, the high priest. There was a Sanhedrin there, right? The elders who were participating, the 70 elders. The Urim V'Tumim was there. I guess there was a special song, and there were definitely thanks offerings. Rava, now we're on page 15a. Rava raises an objection from a Baraisa. With regard to all the sacred vessels that Moses fashioned, their anointment with oil consecrates them. From that point forward, in the generations after Moses, new vessels do not require anointment to be consecrated. Rather, when they get used in the temple service, this initiates them and renders them fit for use. Now, Rava clarifies the objection. But why is this so? let us say here as well that the phrase, and so shall you do, teaches that the same must be done in future generations, right? We have the anointing, or they had the anointing oil, because a high priest would be anointed with oil. So why not use the anointing oil on the service vessels as well? And the Gemara answers, it is different there. As the verse states, with regard to the tabernacle and its vessels, and he anointed them and consecrated them. That's Numbers 7:1. And this teaches that it is only them, the vessels fashioned by Moses in the wilderness, that were consecrated through anointment, but vessels fashioned in later generations are not consecrated through anointment. And the Gemara asks, well, why not say them, the vessels made by Moses, he consecrated specifically through anointment, but vessels made in future generations are consecrated either through anointment or through their ritual service? Why are we precluding the possibility of anointing them with oil to initiate them into their service? And Rav Papa said, oh, wait a minute. Let's just repeat that. The Gemara asks, why not say them, the vessels made by Moses, he consecrated specifically through anointment, but vessels in future generations could be consecrated either through anointment or through their initial service. And to answer this, Rav Papa said, the verse states, quote, and they shall take all the service vessels with which they will serve in the sanctuary, in Numbers 4, verse 12, and the future tense, they will serve, indicates that the verse is referring to future vessels, and the verse makes them dependent upon service, teaching that in future generations, service vessels will be consecrated through their initial service and not through anointing, as was done with the first set of vessels in the wilderness. So the Gemara asks, now that the Merciful One has written, with which they will serve, why do I need the restrictive term, them? And the Gemara answers, had the Merciful One not written them, I would say that they, the vessels made by Moses, were consecrated through anointment alone, but vessels made in later generations must be consecrated through anointment and through service, as the Torah wrote, and so shall you do, referring to future generations. Therefore, the Merciful One excluded future vessels from anointment entirely by stating the word them, teaching that it is only them that were consecrated through anointment, the original vessels, but in later generations, they are not consecrated through anointment. Now, our Mishnah taught, right, Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 2, and with regard to, and when we expand the courtyards of the temple, we also have to bring 2 thanksgiving offerings. So Eitana taught in a Baraisa, and with regard to the 2 thanks offerings that are mentioned here, right, known as a toida, the thanks offering, the reference is to their loaves, but not to their flesh, right? So in other words, when you bring a toida, a thanksgiving offering, it could be an animal, and then there's also loaves that are brought with it. A whole bunch of loaves of bread, different kinds of bread, are brought with a thanksgiving offering. An animal thanks offering is accompanied by 40 loaves of bread that are brought as a meal offering. 10 loaves are leavened, and the remainder is comprised of 10 each of the 3 types of unleavened bread. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters derived? And Rav Chisda said, as the verse states, with regard to the consecration of the wall of Jerusalem in the days of Ezra, and I placed 2 large thanks offerings, and we went in procession to the right upon the wall. So the Gemara clarifies the meaning of this verse. What is meant by large? If we say that the animals of the thanks offering were literally from a large species, i.e. oxen, rather than from a small species like sheep, let the verse state that they were oxen. Rather, let us say that he took animals from among the largest and the finest quality of their species. Now the Gemara challenges this. Is the size of the offering of any importance before heaven? But isn't it taught in a Mishna, Tractate Menachos, page 110a, it is stated with regard to an animal burnt offering, a fire offering, a pleasing aroma, from Leviticus 1:9. And it is also stated with regard to a bird burnt offering, a fire offering, a pleasing aroma. And it is also stated with regard to a meal offering, not an animal at all, a fire offering, a pleasing aroma. in Leviticus 2:2. So the same term is used in all three cases, even though the three offerings are very different value. A bull is super expensive, a bird is quite inexpensive, and a meal offering is by far the least expensive. This teaches that one who brings a substantial sacrifice and one who brings a modest sacrifice have equal merit, and both offerings are accepted as having a pleasing aroma, provided that one directs his heart to his Father in heaven. Right? And this term, the pleasing aroma, reach nechoyach, pleasing aroma, right? Rashi tells us what is pleasing about it. Does God really love the smell of barbecue? No, it's that he commanded that we bring a certain kind of offering in a certain way for a certain situation, and we did it, right? God made a commandment and we fulfilled it. That pleases God. That is pleasing to God. And I always like to say, what an incredible thing, what an incredible example of modesty for us to follow. That God, the infinite God, who, an ant is like a twin brother to an elephant in comparison, relative to the difference between a human and God. God is infinite, we're not. We're much less than an amoeba compared to God. And yet, can an amoeba please you or anger you? No way. And yet God has said that we can please him or anger him. Why? Because he wants to be in relationship with us, and he's told us that our actions matter, that he cares what we do, in the same way that a parent very much cares what his child does or not does. And when we follow our Father in heaven, his commands, it pleases him. He's told us that, right? We only know that because he said so in the Torah. Rather, let us say, right? So at any rate, doesn't matter what the relative value is of a offering. If it was one that God commanded or gave us instructions on how to bring for optional situations, and we brought it according to instruction, then that is pleasing to God. So rather, let us say that large thanks offerings means the larger element in the thanks offering, and this refers to the loaves, right? And that's why we're getting to the fact that the loaves are brought if there is a ceremony to expand the courtyard of the temple. And it's the loaves that need to be brought, right? And what is that? The leavened loaves. As we learned in a Mishna, in Tractate Menachos 76b, the meal part of the thanks offering came from Jerusalem. The meal part of the thanks offering came from 5 Jerusalem sa of flour. Jerusalem sa. A sa is a measure of flour, and it was a little bit different in Jerusalem than outside. So this is the right measure that we're talking about for how much flour has to be used in the bread that's used for this kind of offering. And this is equivalent to 6 sa in the wilderness. The sa referred to in the Bible when the Jewish people were in the wilderness is smaller than the sa that was later used in Jerusalem. And this is equivalent to 2 ephahs, where each ephah is 3 wilderness sa. These 2 ephahs are 20 measures of a tenth of an ephah. 10 of these tenths were used to make leavened loaves, and 10 of these tenths were used to make unleavened loaves. And the unleavened loaves were of 3 types: loaves of matzah, wafers, and measures of flour mixed with water and oil. Accordingly, the leavened loaves were 3 times the size of the unleavened ones, and it was the leavened loaves that were used to consecrate additions to the city of Jerusalem. At the time that Ezra brought the exiles back from Babylonia at the beginning of the Second Temple period, right? Everything had been destroyed at the end of the First Temple period, and they had to define where is Jerusalem and where is the Holy Temple when they built the Holy Temple and rebuilt Jerusalem. Rami Bar Chama says, one can infer from this Baraisa that the temple courtyard is consecrated only with the remainder of the meal offering and not by the loaves of the thanks offering. The remainder of the meal offering is the part left over after a handful of it and its frankincense had been sacrificed on the altar. This remainder is eaten by a priest. And what is the reason that we would use this for this consecration ceremony? The consecration of the temple courtyard is like the consecration of Jerusalem. Just as with regard to Jerusalem, an item that is eaten specifically in it, i.e. the loaves of thanks offering, which are eaten anywhere in the city of Jerusalem, consecrates the city, so too, with regard to the temple courtyard, an item that is eaten specifically there and not outside the temple courtyard must be what is eaten for this ceremony. And what is that? It's the remainder of the meal offering, which consecrates the courtyard, because the other part of it could be taken outside of the temple courtyard. The Gemara asks, is that to say that the loaves of a thanks offering are not eaten in the temple courtyard? Rather, the comparison should be drawn as follows. The consecration of the temple courtyard is like the consecration of Jerusalem, just as Jerusalem is consecrated with the loaves of a thanks offering, which is an item that is eaten inside the city, and which, if it emerges from there, becomes disqualified. So too, the temple courtyard is consecrated with an item that is eaten inside the courtyard, and which, if it emerges from the temple courtyard, would become disqualified. And this item is the remainder of a meal offering, which can be eaten only by a priest and only in the temple courtyard. So the Gemara asks, if the consecration of the temple courtyard is derived from the consecration of Jerusalem, let us say something different. Just as there, with regard to the consecration of an addition that is made to Jerusalem, the loaves used in the ceremony are leavened bread loaves, so too here with regard to the consecration of an addition made to the temple courtyard, the remainder of the meal offering should be leavened. And the Gemara expresses surprise at this suggestion. And how can you understand this? Is there a leavened meal offering? A meal offering is always unleavened. Now we're on page 15b. And if you would say that one leavens the remainder of the meal offering, which the priest partake of, and he consecrates the temple courtyard with it, no, that doesn't work. That too is difficult. As isn't it written, it shall not be baked leavened, for their portion I have given it to them in Leviticus 6:10. And Reish Lakish says in explanation of this verse, even the priest's portion shall not be baked leavened, as it is prohibited to bake even a portion of the meal offering as leavened bread. So the Gemara asks, still, why not? And by the way, so when you think about the 12 loaves of showbread, unleavened bread, right? Anytime that the priests are receiving some bread to eat within the temple courtyard, it's unleavened bread. Now, when we think of unleavened bread, we think of matzah, and modern matzah is hard, crumbly, right? Whether it's shmura matzah that we get at Passover, it's round and has that really handmade, kind of more authentic aspect, or even the square, sheets of matzah that come in a box from Manischewitz or Straits. It's always hard, right? But the way unleavened bread was eaten in ancient times, it was soft. It was not leavened. It wasn't puffy. There was no yeast in it, but it was soft, maybe a little bit more, to imagine it like a tortilla. Okay, a meal offering is always unleavened. And if you would say, no, I already said 15b. Right, so the Gemara asks, still, why not consecrate the temple courtyard with a leavened meal offering? It is possible to consecrate it with the 2 loaves of bread that are brought as a communal offering on the festival of Shevuos, which is a meal offering that is leavened, and is eaten in the temple courtyard. And the Gemara answers, because actually it is not possible to do so. Why? How could we do it? If we build the addition of the temple courtyard on the eve of Shevuos, and also consecrated on the eve of that festival, there is a difficulty as the 2 loaves become consecrated as a meal offering with the slaughter of the 2 lambs that are sacrificed together with them as peace offerings, and this occurs on the festival itself and not on the eve of the festival. If we build the addition to the temple courtyard on the eve of the Shevuos festival, but we consecrate it only now on the festival, this still doesn't work, as we require consecration at the time of the completion of the building. If we build it on the festival and consecrate it on the festival, that also cannot be, as the building of the temple does not override the festival. We don't engage in any construction, not even of the Holy Temple, on a festival. If we leave the 2 loaves until after the festival and build the addition of the temple courtyard on the day after the festival and consecrate it by eating the 2 loaves on that day, this is also difficult, as the 2 loaves were already disqualified by virtue of being left overnight after the festival. Right, so all these cases are discussing what if we used the 2 loaves of Shevuos, which are the only kinds of meal offerings that are leavened, that, in order to use that to consecrate the temple. But I thought we were talking about using two kinds of loaves that are similar to the loaves of Shevuos. But apparently no, they're talking about the actual loaves of Shevuos. If we build the addition to the temple courtyard on the eve of the festival and leave a little bit unbuilt until after the festival, and as soon as the day is over and the festival is finished, we immediately finish the building the addition, and we consecrate it with the two loaves before they become disqualified, this still doesn't work, as the building of the temple cannot take place at night. This is, as Abaye says, from where is it derived? The building of the temple cannot take place at night, as it is stated, and on the day that the tabernacle was erected, from which it can be derived, one may erect it during the day, but one may not erect it at night. Therefore, it is impossible to consecrate the temple courtyard with the two loaves of Shevuos. It must be done with the remainder of an unleavened meal offering, right? Not just something like a meal offering that we would use specially for this, but rather an actual meal offering that was offered in the temple, and then we're going to use its remainder to consecrate the addition. Now, the Mishna teaches concerning the consecration of an addition to the city of Jerusalem or the temple courtyard, that another part of that procedure was a song, a special song. So the sages taught in a Baraisa. They sang the song of thanksgiving. What is this? Psalm 100, which begins a psalm of thanksgiving, accompanied by harps, lyres, cymbals, and every corner, harps, lyres, and cymbals at every corner, and upon every large stone in Jerusalem. And they also recited Psalm 30, which begins, I will extol you, O Lord, for you have lifted me up, and the song of evil spirits, i.e. Psalm 91, which begins, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High, and some say that this psalm is called the Song of Plagues. But at any rate, if we're going to make an addition to the temple courtyard or to the boundaries of Jerusalem, the song that is included is Psalm 100, Psalm 30, and Psalm 91. Psalm 30 is in our daily morning prayers. 91, I think we say on Shabbos. I'm not sure if we say it every day or not. The reason of the one who says that it is called the Song of Plagues, Psalm 91, is that it is written, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling, 91:10. And the reason of the one who says that it is called the Song of Evil Spirits is that it is written, 1,000 shall fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. And we learned elsewhere in the Talmud that this can refer, sort of generally speaking, it's like, if you're in a war, God will protect you. If it's a holy war, God will protect us. But it's also can be used to teach that at all times we're surrounded by demons. And thank God, we don't have that spiritual eye open that would see them, because we'd be paralyzed with fear. So thank God we don't have that kind of, mystical eye open at all times. And I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. And they recited the psalm from the verse, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. That's how Psalm 91 begins. Until they completed the verse, because you, O Lord, are my refuge. You have made the Most High your habitation. 91:9. And they would then recite Psalm 3, which begins a psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. Lord, how many of my enemies have become? Until they reach the verse, salvation belongs to the Lord, your blessing upon your people, Selah, which is Psalm 3, verse 9. It is related that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi would recite these verses to protect him from evil spirits during the night and fall asleep while saying them. And the Gemara asks, how could he do that? But doesn't Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi himself say, one is prohibited from healing himself with words of Torah? You can't use words of Torah like a magical incantation. Of course, you can recite Psalms when you're ill or praying for somebody to be healed, but you can't use them as an incantation. And the Gemara answers, to protect oneself is different. as he recited these verses only to protect himself from evil spirits and not as an incantation to heal. Right? Reciting verses is a measure of protection. And we've been reciting verses as a prayer for the release of the hostages ever since October 7th. At morning and evening prayers, we recite Psalm 121 and Psalm 130 for that purpose. Now, the Gemara challenges, but rather when Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said that this is prohibited, he was referring to a situation where there is already a wound and one recites these verses in order to heal himself. But if there's already a wound and he recites these verses over it, it is only this prohibited and nothing more. But didn't we learn in a Mishna in Tractate Sanhedrin 90a that one who whispers an incantation over a wound has no share in the world to come? And the Gemara answers, wasn't it stated with regard to the Mishnah, to that Mishnah, that Rabbi Yochanan says the Mishnah was taught with regard to one who spits into the wound and then whispers these verses. And the reason for the severity of this action is that the name of heaven must not be mentioned in connection with spitting, as doing so is a show of contempt for God. So again, you're perfectly welcome at all times to recite Psalms, especially if it will focus you or because you're praying for somebody to be healed. But really what you're doing is praying to God, and the Psalms are helping you formulate the words for praying to God. Somebody who uses words from the Bible as if it's some kind of a magic spell, that would be prohibited under that prohibition that was just mentioned. Okay, just a couple questions. Alice, I was told that Sephardim have soft matzah. Yeah, soft matzah still exists. It's just not as common. But some people, well, I think I've even heard that some people are making it now for Passover. I think you're probably talking about soft matzah at Passover. And I guess Sephardim, some Sephardis do that. And some other people kind of bring that more into vogue. But I was just mentioning that that's like all matzah used to be considered, that when they talked about matzah, maybe it would become, sort of stale and hard then. But normally it was eaten soft but unleavened. And finally, Yosef, concerning sexual intercourse with a nida, as a former drug abuse counselor, I'm aware of conflicting theories about the nature of pleasure. Some neurologists say it is inherent with dopamine in the brain. Others believe it is more sociological and pleasurable action that is more subjective. Either way, the man realizing he's in the middle of the act with a nida must keep his mind occupied because of the risk. Right? And that's just commenting on this idea that he doesn't want to cause himself any further pleasure once he realizes that he's in this precarious situation, right? Where he needs to end the intercourse, but he has to do so without causing himself more pleasure. So, he just focuses on that, and then the erection will go flaccid, and then he withdraws, and, that is the correct way to deal with that situation. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Wednesday, at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and resume on the following Tuesday as we have some family obligations outside the city. Tomorrow, regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, tomorrow, Wednesday. All the best. And thank you for accommodating us today that we had this special requirement to go at 3 instead of 6. All the best.